Before the war, Ukraine's Air Force had 51 active MiG-29s, so trained pilots and technicians could be in place and would be able to engage in combat quickly. The Polish Air Force will in turn be supplemented with British fighters if the Polish government makes the appropriate request. We will very positively consider a possible request from Poland to fill future gaps in the air defense system. We have done this before when Warsaw handed over T-72 tanks to Ukraine. At that time, we sent Challenger 2 tanks to Poland, and we will behave similarly in the case of fighters. 4 Polish MiG-29 fighter jets will arrive in Ukraine in the next few days. According to American Institute for the Study of War, Poland's decision may influence Western policy and expand the scope of military support to include combat aircraft. 13 MiG-29 fighters from Slovakia will also soon arrive in Ukraine. Since the beginning of the Russian aggression, Poland has transferred to Ukraine military equipment worth more than 2 billion euros, including Leopard 2, T-72, and PT-91 tanks, Krab cannon howitzers, Grad rifles, anti-aircraft launchers, and ammunition. We will definitely have many more tanks, planes, long-range missile launchers, anti-aircraft and anti-missile weapons than we had a year ago, so we have more time to prepare for a possible threat. I am convinced that this war meant that in a few years, Poland will be much safer than in a year, let alone 5 years. The policy of supporting Ukraine also continues in Brussels. European Union foreign ministers have agreed to a 3-stage plan that calls for supplying Ukraine with ammunition from its own warehouses, joint purchases, and strengthening the European defense industry. The community's budget will be allocated 2 billion euros for this purpose. Poland is one of the main producers of 155mm caliber ammunition, for which the Ukrainians have a particular need. We need to provide ammunition, not only a focus on deliveries which we Europeans can coordinate together, but also on joint production. Here we are looking in Germany at the Gepard anti-aircraft weapon ammunitions, but it is clear that there needs to be further production efforts provided jointly by the Europeans.
I don't think that this can lead to another kind of escalation. If you see at the level of brutality, rocket attacks which Russia perpetrates against the energy infrastructure, complete city razed, destroys, childs kidnapped and forcibly being Russified, how more can this escalate?
According to a former advisor to the Ukrainian president's office, Alexei Arestovich, Kiev will soon begin a massive shelling of Crimea as part of its spring counteroffensive. The Russians are suffering significant losses at Vuhledar, which reduces their already limited offensive capabilities. In addition, the Ukrainians have carried out a counteroffensive near Bakhmut.
Oceniam, że uderzenia w tej chwili wykonywane na Krym.
I think that the strikes being made on the Crimea at the moment have a psychological and propaganda character. They remind Ukrainians and the entire international community that Crimea was, is, and will always be Russian. In my opinion, it's still too early for a counteroffensive. They need to wait until the wetlands are passable again for heavy equipment. Over the past 24 hours, Ukrainians have repulsed 69 hostile attacks. Bakhmut remains at the epicenter of the fighting. Russian troops are also continuing their assaults near Liman, Marinka, in the direction of Shakhtarsk and Avdiivka. One of the goals is to fully flank Avdiivka and to force the Ukrainians to retreat. Avdiivka may soon become a second Bakhmut. Currently, Russian forces are not successful in the vicinity of the city. Moreover, they are suffering significant losses in personnel and military equipment. Their attacks are predictable and are repelled, but the increase in operational activities by the Russians in this section is worrisome. On Friday, the International Criminal Court in The Hague issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russian Children's Rights Commissioner Maria Lvova-Belova. The warrant is based on suspected deportation of children from the occupied territories of Ukraine. Today in London, justice ministers from 40 countries discussed options for increasing support for the International Criminal Court. In this way, the British government wants to help prosecute those responsible for war crimes in Ukraine.